The sun had just begun to sink behind the jagged cliffs when Elena Hartley stepped out of the ranch house with a wooden bucket in her hand. She had worked at the Hollow Creek Ranch for 3 years, long enough to know every sound the wind carried, every whistle the cowboys used, and every scent of dust before a storm. But the sound she heard now was none of those. It was the sharp cry of a hawk. Elena froze. Cowboys used whistles, but Apache scouts used birds. Her heart jumped against her ribs. She turned toward the stables, hoping to warn someone, but it was already too late. A blur of horses and painted warriors swept across the yard like a storm tearing loose from the mountains. Arrows struck the ground near the corral. A horse shrieked. The ranch hands shouted and scrambled for rifles, but the Apaches moved with terrifying speed. They weren't here for blood. They were here for horses. Elena ducked behind a wagon, trembling, clutching the bucket as if it were a shield. She should have run. She should have hidden. She should have been anywhere but here. But the moment she tried to slip toward the back door, a shadow dropped over her. A warrior on horseback reined in sharply in front of her. The horse's breath fogged the air. The rider's eyes were dark, sharp, fixed entirely on her. He dismounted in one fluid motion, landing lightly despite his size. His face was marked with streaks of black paint that made him look carved from storm clouds. Elena drew in a trembling breath. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't threaten her. Instead, he stepped closer, slow, controlled, as though trying not to startle a frightened deer. She tried to bolt, but his hand shot out, catching her wrist. Not harshly, but firmly enough that she could not break free. "No run," he said in accented English. "No scare." But Elena was already terrified. "Please," she whispered, "I've done nothing. I'm only a maid." The warrior studied her face with unsettling stillness. The camp's chaos echoed around them, the pounding of hooves, the crack of ropes snapping off fence posts, the shouts of men. But he seemed to hear none of it. His gaze held her pinned. Then he spoke again, his voice dropping into something quieter, deeper. "Don't move." She didn't, not because she obeyed, but because her legs simply refused to work. Something in his tone was not threatening. It was protective, almost pleading, like he was trying to keep her from stumbling into danger she couldn't yet see. He guided her toward his horse. She struggled once, a desperate wrench of her arm, but he steadied her with surprising gentleness. "No hurt," he murmured. "I take, only take. Only take." The words chilled her skin. Before she could cry out for help, he lifted her effortlessly onto the horse. His hands were warm, calloused, but precise, as if he feared bruising her. He swung up behind her, his arm caging her in as the horse surged forward with the others. The ranch disappeared behind them, men shouting. Dust rising, the world she had always known shrinking with every pounding hoofbeat. As the warriors rode into the canyon, Elena finally dared to turn her head slightly to look at the man holding her. His jaw was strong, set with determination. His hair was long and tied back with a red strip of cloth. He rode like he was part of the horse itself. Even in the fading light, she could see the small scar that cut across his cheek, a mark of someone who had survived battles she couldn't imagine. "Why me?" she whispered. The wind stole her words. But he heard them. His grip tightened, not painfully, but as if those two words struck something deep within him. He didn't answer. The canyon swallowed the warriors, its walls rising into tall red cliffs. Elena felt small, helpless, trapped between stone and sky. She had no idea what awaited her in the Apache camp. Trade? Ransom? Something worse? But the warrior behind her didn't treat her like a trophy, not like an enemy. There was a strange tension in him, like he was fighting something inside himself. When the horse slowed, he leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Safe now. he said softly. With me? Elena didn't understand why, but the words sent a confusing warmth through her fear. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his tribe. She didn't know that this moment, this sunset, right into the unknown, was the first step toward a destiny that would shatter every rule of both their worlds. But he knew, and he never took his eyes off her as the night swallowed them whole. Night fell over the Apache camp like a curtain of black velvet, pierced only by the glow of scattered fires. Elena sat near one of them, her wrists free, her feet dusty, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. She had expected to be tied up, guarded by men with spears, mocked or threatened. But instead, the warrior who had taken her tall hawk had placed her on a blanket, offered her water, and then stood a few steps away like a silent guardian. She did not understand him. Around her, the tribe moved with a rhythm she had never seen. Women ground maize and tended fires. Men returned from scouting with the stolen horses. Children peeked at her from behind their mothers' skirts. She wasn't invisible, but she wasn't welcomed either. She was a stranger in a world that had rules she didn't know how to read. Tall Hawk had not left her side. Every few minutes he glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Not cold, not angry. Something far more complicated. Finally, after what felt like hours of silent observation, the elders gathered. Their low voices rose and fell like distant thunder. Elena watched as Tall Hawk approached them, speaking in Apache. His voice was firm, controlled, carrying a weight she didn't understand. The elders gestured toward her, their eyes sharp, testing. Tall Hawk's jaw tightened. He argued calmly but stubbornly. She realized then he was speaking about her. The thought made her chest tighten. When the discussion ended, Tall Hawk returned to her side. He crouched beside her, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat of his body. You stay here tonight, he said softly, tapping the ground. Safe, safe. The word didn't comfort her. It confused her more. Why would a warrior care about her safety at all? Why are you doing this? She whispered. He looked into the fire instead of at her. The flames painted his cheekbones in gold, cast shadows over the scar that cut across his face. Only when he finally met her eyes did she feel the full force of it, an intensity that made her breath catch. I should not want you, he murmured. She blinked. What? His hand flexed against his knee, as though he was holding something back, not anger, but emotion. I bring you here for tribe, he said. For trade. For ransom. For choice of elders. Elena swallowed, gripping the blanket beneath her. But when I see you... He hesitated, the words caught in his throat. When I see you, I forget. He leaned closer, not touching her, but close enough that the world narrowed to the two of them alone. Then, in a low rasp of a whisper, he said words that made her whole body go still. I need to make love. Don't move. Her breath vanished. She stared at him, eyes wide. The heat of his whisper brushed her ear like a flame. But his face, God. His face was not the face of a man trying to claim something. It was the face of a man confessing something he shouldn't feel. Something forbidden. His shoulders were rigid, muscles tight, as if he were wrestling not with her, but with himself. She shook her head slowly, her voice trembling. You're not going to hurt me? Tall Hawk closed his eyes as though pained by the thought. No hurt, he whispered. Never hurt. His voice cracked on the last word. He sat back, pulling away from her as if distance was the only thing keeping his restraint from breaking. He pressed a hand over his heart and bowed his head. You make me fire, he said quietly, but fire must not burn you. The tribe stared at them from the shadows, whispering among themselves, trying to interpret the unusual tension between their warrior and the captive maid. Some looked curious, some suspicious. one or two interested in claiming her for themselves. Tall Hawk saw it. He rose, anger tightening his jaw. No one approached her. No one looked at her too long. He stood between her and the rest of the tribe. Like a wall of living stone, Elena's fear began to ease, not entirely, but enough that she could breathe. She should have been terrified of him, but the whisper he had spoken wasn't a threat. It was a confession, one he instantly fought to hide, one he almost regretted letting slip. The air around them pulsed with something dangerous, something new, something neither of them could yet name, and Elena realized, with a ripple of fear and something else entirely, that this Apache warrior was not the kind of man who took what he wanted. He was the kind who wanted what he could not take, and she had just become the most forbidden thing in his world. Elena awoke at dawn to the distant sound of drums, soft and steady, like a heartbeat flowing through the canyon. She blinked against the pale pink light creeping into the small tent she'd been placed in the night before. Her body was stiff, her nerves raw, her thoughts jumbled from what had happened. Tall Hawk's whisper still echoed in her mind, his voice thick with a desire he wasn't proud of, a fire he had refused to unleash. I need to make love, don't move. But instead of touching her, he had walked away and taken guard outside her tent, standing between her and the entire tribe. She had never seen a man more torn between wanting and protecting. When she pushed aside the flap of the tent, Tall Hawk was there. He stood with his arms crossed over his chest, eyes scanning the camp like a wolf guarding its territory. But the moment he saw her emerge, his posture softened, just enough to catch her breath. "You sleep?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Yes," she hesitated. "Thank you." He nodded once, a small gesture for him, but significant enough that she felt its weight. The camp was waking. Warriors returned from the night watch, and women began preparing food. Yet a strange energy pulsed through the tribe, eyes darting toward Elena, some with curiosity, some with judgment, others with interest that made her stomach twist. "Come," Tall Hawk said, motioning her toward a nearby fire. "Eat." He waited for her to sit, then handed her a small bowl of roasted corn and beans. His fingers brushed hers, just barely, but the contact sent a tremor down her arm. He pulled back as though the touch burned him. Two warriors approached them. Black Coyote, a tall man with sharp cheekbones and a calculating stare, and a younger warrior beside him. They stopped in front of Tall Hawk. Black Coyote smirked. "You keep the white maid for yourself?" Elena stiffened. Tall Hawk didn't flinch. "I keep her safe." "Safe," Black Coyote repeated mockingly. "But she is a captive. She should be given or traded, not guarded like a wife." The younger warrior murmured something in agreement. Tall Hawk's jaw tightened. "She is not for trade." "And not for you," Black Coyote snapped. "You break the tribe's law." Tall Hawk stepped forward, shoulders squared, body tense. The younger warrior grabbed Black Coyote's arm, pulling him back. Another elder approached quickly, breaking the tension. He spoke to Tall Hawk in Apache firm, warning, authoritative. Tall Hawk responded in the same low, simmering tone. Though Elena didn't understand the words, she understood the meaning. The tribe wanted her distributed, traded, or given to someone. Tall Hawk refused. The elder pointed at Elena, then at Tall Hawk, then shook his head. No more protection. No more shielding. The tribe would decide her fate tonight. Tall Hawk didn't argue, but Elena saw something shift inside him, something dark and determined. After the elders left, he motioned to her. "Come, I show you camp." She followed him, staying close. He walked her past the drying racks of meat, the leather-making stations, the painted teepees, the children playing with small bone toys. Everything looked strange and beautiful to her, almost like stepping into another life that wasn't hers. They stopped near a quiet stream at the edge of the camp. Wind rustled through the cottonwoods, scattering golden leaves into the water. Elena sank onto a stone, hugging her knees. Tall Hawk, what happens now? He knelt in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. His gaze held hers, fierce but gentle. Last night I say words I should not, he murmured, words from heart. Not for you to fear. Her breath hitched. I wasn't afraid of your words. He swallowed hard. That simple confession unraveled him more than anything else she could have said. I fight myself, he admitted. Fight to not touch. Fight to not take. You think Apache is wild, but I am a man who controls fire. He placed a hand over his chest, pressing it hard. Fire here, burning since I see you at ranch. She felt the truth in every syllable. But I do not claim you, he said firmly. I protect you. Until tribe choose, the words struck her. Even if that choice gives me to another man? Tall Hawk's eyes darkened, pain flickering deep in their depths. His voice dropped to a whisper that barely carried over the sound of the stream. If tribe give you away, I still keep you safe. Even if cost me blood. Elena's breath shuddered. He wasn't just refusing to claim her. He was refusing to betray her, refusing to use her, refusing even to take what he desperately wanted. This man, this feared Apache warrior, was the only thing keeping her safe in a camp full of strangers. And slowly, terrifyingly, she realized something she never expected. She trusted him, and somehow, he already knew it. Days passed in a strange rhythm for Elena. Each morning, the sun poured golden light into the camp, and each evening, the shadows of the cliffs swallowed the warriors as they returned from scouting or raids. She learned the sound of approaching horses, the subtle differences between the men's calls, and even how to carry water in a leather pouch without spilling a drop. But nothing prepared her for the moments when Tall Hawk would appear, silent as a shadow, guarding her, guiding her, teaching her. He had begun to show her the world beyond the camp, not to claim her, not to parade her before others, but to instruct her, protect her, and teach her survival. They ventured into the cliffs together, learning to move through the canyon paths, to read the wind, to anticipate the motion of the animals that lived there. Elena had never ridden a horse like this, never felt the muscles beneath her press against the beast, never leaned into a turn that sent her stomach soaring. And yet, under Tall Hawk's steady hand and careful eyes, she began to trust herself, and more importantly, him. During these excursions, the bond between them grew not openly, but in small, undeniable ways. When she stumbled over a hidden root or nearly lost balance on a narrow ridge, his hand would brush hers, just barely touching, but enough to make her pulse quicken. When a hawk circled overhead, he would point silently, and she would catch the way his eyes lingered on her, not as a captor, not as a predator, but as a man captivated by someone who was not supposed to exist in his world. One afternoon, they stopped near a hidden waterfall deep within the canyon. The water cascaded over smooth stones, sending mist into the air that sparkled in the sunlight. Tall Hawk dismounted first, landing gracefully, then extended a hand to her. "Come," he said, voice low but warm. Elena felt a tremor in her chest as she accepted his hand, and he steadied her as she slid off the horse. They walked closer to the edge, where the water rushed past like molten silver. He gestured to the rocks, showing her the safest places to step, guiding her fingers over moss and stone. She laughed at herself when she slipped slightly, and he caught her wrist just in time, his palm firm and protective. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and for the first time, she noticed the depth of emotion lurking there, a fierce, unspoken storm. That night, returning to camp, the quiet tension between them had thickened. He remained at the edge of her tent while she arranged her small blanket. They spoke little, only exchanging words about mundane things. Where the horses were hidden, the timing of the scouts, the best herbs to brew for a headache. But in every glance and every casual touch, there was an undercurrent of something far more potent, something Elena could neither name nor resist. She realized that Tall Hawk's whispers from the first night, the ones that had made her heart hammer in both fear and longing, were not idle words. They had been a confession, a signal of a desire he was determined to control. And now, day by day, he was teaching her that desire could exist alongside care, respect, and trust. He was showing her that he could want her without claiming her, could need her without taking her, could burn with fire and yet keep it contained. The children of the tribe occasionally peeked through the tent flaps, curious about the strange white woman who had entered their world. They were shy at first, then daring, and finally affectionate. Elena laughed as she offered them small treats she had prepared, feeling her heart warm. Tall Hawk watched from a short distance, eyes narrowed not in jealousy, but in protective vigilance. Anyone who dared approach her without his permission would face his wrath. By the end of the week, Elena felt a strange, dizzying sense of belonging not just to the canyon or the tribe, but to the man who had quietly made her his world. Tall Hawk's presence was a constant, both frightening and comforting, a silent promise that no harm would come to her while he lived. And while she tried to convince herself that she was only learning to survive, the truth was unavoidable. She had begun to care for him, not as a prisoner might care for a captor, but as a soul might care for another soul, fiercely, cautiously, and with the fear that the world might intervene at any moment. As she lay in her blanket that night, listening to the soft hooves of horses in the distance and the whisper of the canyon wind, she realized something she could no longer deny. This forbidden bond, formed in the shadow of cliffs and firelight, was shaping her destiny. And in the center of it, hidden in plain sight, was Tall Hawk, the warrior who had captured her, yet never truly taken her, and who now held the key to everything she could never have imagined. The morning sun spilled gold over the cliffs, but it could not soften the tension that had taken root in the Apache camp. Word had traveled quickly. The elders had decided that Elena could no longer remain merely protected by Tall Hawk. She was a captive, and captives were meant to be traded, given as compensation, or claimed by another warrior. Elena sensed the change before anyone spoke. The children no longer peeked at her with shy curiosity. The women who had been friendly now cast cautious glances. Even the men, who had accepted her presence, lingered longer near her tent with quiet whispers. And then there was Black Coyote, whose eyes burned like embers whenever they met hers. He had been waiting for this day, waiting for the chance to claim her for himself, and perhaps to challenge Tall Hawk's authority at the same time. Tall Hawk sensed it too. When he approached her at dawn, his expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. He whispered in low tones that no one else could hear, "Tonight, tribe decide. You must stay close. Trust me." Elena nodded, though fear coiled in her stomach. By mid-afternoon, the elders assembled in a wide circle around the central fire. The atmosphere was heavy with judgment, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and sweat. Elena was brought forward, escorted by two younger warriors, while Tall Hawk remained at her side, tall and imposing. The elders' voices carried a sharp authority, declaring that the law of the tribe demanded she be given to another man. Elena's heart raced. Her breath caught. She had been protected, shielded from the outside world. But now she faced the judgment of the entire tribe and the possibility of being handed over to someone she did not know, someone who could claim her without care, without concern. Black Coyote stepped forward, voice cold and confident. "I am worthy. I have strength. She is mine by right." Tall Hawk did not flinch. He stepped forward, voice low and steady, carrying the weight of both warning and determination. "No, she belongs to no one. Not to trade. Not to claim. I protect her." A murmur rippled through the circle. The elders frowned, recognizing the challenge implicit in Tall Hawk's defiance. Yet there was no fear in his stance, only the fierce loyalty that had always defined him. Black Coyote's eyes narrowed. He drew his knife, gesturing for a fight. Tall Hawk didn't hesitate. With a fluid, controlled movement, he drew his own blade. Sparks of steel caught the sunlight, and the camp held its collective breath. The fight was swift, a clash of skill, strength, and determination. Every strike Tall Hawk made was precise, measured, a dance of controlled power. Elena watched in awe and terror, realizing that he was risking everything, not just his honor, but his life for her. Finally, with a deft maneuver, Tall Hawk disarmed Black Coyote, forcing him to bow before the elders. The camp erupted in whispers, some shocked, some impressed. The elders consulted in hurried tones. They recognized that Tall Hawk's loyalty was absolute, that no one could challenge him without consequence, and that his protection of Elena was not born of whim, but of unshakable devotion. Tall Hawk turned to Elena, his eyes softening for the first time since the morning. "You are safe," he said quietly, though the strain in his voice revealed how close he had come to losing control. "No one will take you." Elena stepped closer, her hand brushing his, just enough to convey her gratitude and fear. She realized then that this moment had changed her forever. Not only had Tall Hawk proven his strength, but he had shown her the depth of his devotion and unwavering, fearless loyalty that defied the rules of the tribe, the world, and even his own desires. That night, as the fires burned low and the camp settled into uneasy silence, Tall Hawk remained at her side, alert and protective. Elena could feel the tension in his body, the same tension she had sensed from the first night, now sharpened by the threat of the tribe's decision. Yet despite everything, he never touched her inappropriately. His restraint, his care, was almost more powerful than any act of possession could have been. For Elena, it was the first time she truly understood the meaning of trust. She had come into the Apache camp as a frightened, powerless maid. But in that night, as the stars blinked cold and distant above the cliffs, she realized that she had been given something far more profound than freedom or safety. She had been given the unwavering loyalty of a man who would fight anyone, even his own people, to protect her. And in that realization, a new fire kindled within her, not fear, not rebellion, but the faintest, most dangerous spark of desire. Her destiny was no longer something that happened to her. It was something she would face hand in hand with Tall Hawk, against whatever the world dared to throw in their path. The camp had quieted into a rare calm. The fires burned low, casting flickering shadows across the cliffs, and the night was alive only with the whispers of wind through cottonwoods and the distant cry of an owl. Elena sat near the stream at the edge of the canyon, her knees drawn to her chest. The events of the day, the elders' judgment, the fight with Black Coyote, Tall Hawk's unwavering protection spun in her mind like a storm she could not escape. Tall Hawk approached quietly, his boots barely making a sound on the rock-strewn ground. He knelt beside her, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. The silence stretched between them, heavy and electric, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper, but carrying the weight of everything he had been holding inside. "I should not feel this way," he said. His dark eyes glimmered in the firelight, reflecting both struggle and longing. "A warrior does not desire. A warrior does not." He paused, his jaw tight. "I swore I would never touch another woman after my wife died. Never, but you." Elena's breath caught. She had felt it too, the unspoken tension, the fire simmering beneath his restraint, but hearing him confess it aloud made her pulse quicken. "You broke walls," he continued, his voice raw, trembling just enough to reveal the man beneath the warrior. Walls I built for survival, for control. I cannot forget your face, your voice, the way you move, the way you are alive when others do not see it. She looked at him, hard hammering, unsure what to say. Every instinct screamed caution. Every emotion pulled her closer. I tried to fight, he admitted, his hand pressing to his chest. I tried to tell myself I must not want you, but fire burns. Fire will not wait. I cannot hide it any more. I need you, but I will not harm you. I will not take what is not freely given. Elena's chest tightened. She realized then that this man so fierce, so controlled, so unyielding, was offering her the most vulnerable part of himself. Not his body, not his power. His heart. She reached out slowly, brushing her hand against his. It was a fleeting touch, barely there, but enough to draw a flicker of relief across his face. He exhaled, a sound that seemed to carry months of tension, grief, and desire all at once. You feel this too, he murmured. I see it in your eyes. Do not deny it. You must not lie to me. Elena's throat was tight, and words refused to form. She had tried to stay strong, to convince herself that her loyalty, her fear, and her gratitude were the only things she should feel. But now, looking at him, the warrior who had captured her, protected her, and fought for her, she could not. Yes, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. I feel it. I cannot deny it either. Tall Hawk's gaze softened, the fire in his eyes shifting from burning desire to something tender, almost fragile. He leaned closer, careful not to invade her space, and whispered again, the words carrying a promise rather than a command. Then trust me. I will not hurt you. I will not break you, but I cannot lie. I need you. I want you, but only as you allow. Only if you choose me. Elena's pulse raced, her body humming with tension and longing. For the first time, the fear of the world, of the tribe, and of her past seemed to fall away. In the presence of this man, this fierce, conflicted warrior, she felt something she had never felt before. Safety intertwined with desire. Passion intertwined with trust. The canyon around them seemed to hold its breath. Stars glittered like tiny fires above, reflecting the turmoil and tenderness in their hearts. Elena realized with both fear and anticipation that the fire Tall Hawk had tried so hard to contain was now shared between them. And that spark, dangerous and forbidden though it was, could not be extinguished in that quiet night. With nothing but the whispers of the wind and the soft rush of the stream, they both understood the truth. This bond, forged in capture, protection, and longing, had grown into something neither could ignore. And whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together, fire and all. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, the kind of sunlight that made the red cliffs glow like embers. Yet in the Apache camp, no light could ease the tension that had settled over Elena. The events of the previous night, the whispered confessions, the silent acknowledgement of desire had shifted something fundamental. She could no longer pretend that her fear or gratitude were the only emotion she felt. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her destiny was entwined with Tall Hawk's, but the tribe would not wait for hearts to align. The elders had gathered once more, their decision unyielding. The whispers among the warriors were louder now, some openly discussing which man among them would be granted the right to claim Elena. She could feel their eyes on her, their gaze both assessing and covetous. Even Black Coyote lingered, his stare sharp and possessive, waiting for any sign of weakness. Tall Hawk stood beside her, unyielding as a cliff wall. His presence was both a comfort and a warning. Anyone who approached her without his permission would face his wrath. He had fought for her once and was prepared to do it again. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as he silently challenged anyone who dared approach. The elder's chief spoke, his voice heavy with authority. "The maid is not of our tribe. She may not remain free to choose. She is to be given to one who proves worthy." Elena's pulse quickened. The words made her stomach twist in fear. She had seen what these decisions could mean. She had witnessed Black Coyote's appetite, his willingness to seize what he wanted without care. Her heart screamed, but she had no voice to argue. Tall Hawk's hand brushed hers, a subtle grounding touch. His eyes met hers, dark and unyielding. Without words, he conveyed everything she needed to hear. He would not let them take her. But unlike the first day he protected her, now there was more. He did not simply shield her from harm. He offered her a choice, and with it, a promise. Elena took a deep breath, gathering courage she did not know she possessed. She stepped forward, raising her head to meet the elder's gaze. "I choose him," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "Tall Hawk has protected me. He has shown me honor, and he has shown me love. I will not go with another man." A hush fell over the circle. The children peeked from behind their mothers, sensing the weight of the moment. The warriors stiffened, some with surprise, some with grudging respect. Black Coyote's eyes blazed with fury, but he did not step forward. He knew the outcome of challenging Tall Hawk. The elders exchanged glances. In silence, they acknowledged the power of the bond between Elena and the warrior. They had seen Tall Hawk's loyalty, his restraint, his unwavering devotion. In the end, they could not ignore the truth. The maid's choice carried weight, and no man in the tribe could override it without consequences. Tall Hawk's chest rose and fell, the tension in his body melting into relief. He reached out, gently lifting Elena's hand to his lips. His voice, low and husky, carried both reverence and something more primal. "You are mine to protect," he murmured, "but only as long as you allow. Your choice honors both of us." Elena's heart swelled. She realized then that her life had shifted irreversibly. She had come into the canyon as a frightened maid, a stranger in a world of warriors and ancient rules. But now, by choosing Tall Hawk, she had embraced a life she could never have imagined, a life bound to a man whose fire, strength, and devotion matched her own courage and longing. The tribe began preparations for a ceremony, simple yet solemn, to honor her choice. Women decorated the camp with woven grasses and flowers. Children brought small offerings, and the elders stood in quiet acknowledgement. Elena felt a mixture of awe and fear, but above all, a sense of belonging that night. As the fires burned low and the stars glittered overhead, Tall Hawk and Elena sat together, close but not touching, letting the silence speak for them. No words were needed to convey the depth of their bond. Their hearts had found each other in the midst of fear, desire, and danger. For Elena, the moment was profound. She had chosen her destiny, and in doing so, had chosen the man who had risked everything for her. And for Tall Hawk, it was a quiet triumph of love, restraint, and devotion, a promise kept and a fire finally acknowledged. From that night forward, their paths were intertwined. A bond forged in the canyons and cemented by courage, desire, and mutual respect. Elena's destiny was no longer a question of survival. It was a life of love, passion, and unwavering loyalty in the arms of the Apache warrior who had made her his own. The night sky stretched above the canyon in a canopy of stars, each one twinkling like a witness to the impossible journey Elena had endured. The camp was quiet, the fires low, and even the wind seemed to pause, as though holding its breath for the moment that was to come. Elena sat near the fire, wrapped in a blanket, her heart still racing from the day's events. She had chosen Tall Hawk. She had declared her destiny. And now, at last, she could feel the weight of freedom to love, to trust, and to surrender to the fire that had been building between them since the moment he had first whispered to her in the canyon. Tall Hawk approached slowly, his long shadow stretching over the ground like a protective cloak. He knelt before her, his gaze steady and unflinching, but softer now, more intimate, revealing a tenderness that no one in the camp had ever seen from him. He extended his hand, and Elena took it without hesitation, feeling the rough warmth of his skin against hers. "Do you remember?" he murmured, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her chest. "The first night we rode into the canyon?" She nodded, her throat tight. "I remember." His eyes darkened with memory, shadowed by the weight of desire he had restrained for so long. "I whispered something to you, words I should not have spoken." His hand brushed hers lightly, fingers grazing hers as though testing the boundary between restraint and surrender. "Then I kept you safe without taking, though my fire burned all the same." Elena's breath caught. She had never forgotten that whisper either, the dangerous, trembling confession that had left her heart pounding and her mind reeling. It had been both terrifying and magnetic, a fire she could not deny. And now she saw it mirrored in his eyes, the same hunger, the same care, the same devotion tempered by restraint. Tall Hawk leaned closer, careful not to rush her, and his voice dropped to a whisper again. "Tonight, nothing will separate us. Not fear, not the world, not the rules that bound me before. You have chosen me. And now I can finally give you what my heart has kept in shadow for so long." Elena felt warmth flood her chest, an electric anticipation she could no longer suppress. She reached up, her hand brushing the line of his jaw, feeling the rough strength there, the curve of his lips that had haunted her dreams. "I trust you," she whispered, her voice trembling, "all of me." He exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and longing, and cupped her face with both hands. His touch was tender, reverent, yet charged with a quiet intensity that made her knees weaken. For a moment, the world shrank to nothing but the two of them, the canyon walls, the low fire, the distant stars fading into insignificance against the heap between them. "I will not hurt you," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "I will hold you as carefully as the world allows. But you will feel every bit of the fire I have kept hidden, every desire, every devotion, every love." Elena closed her eyes, surrendering, allowing the fear, the longing, and the passion to merge into something sacred. She had come to this canyon as a frightened maid, captured, uncertain, and unclaimed. But now, in the arms of the warrior who had never wavered in protecting her, she felt whole. He leaned closer still, brushing his lips against hers in a kiss that was gentle at first, then insistent, carrying the heat of the canyon, the fire of his desire and the depth of his love. Every barrier he had built, every rule he had followed, melted away in that moment. Elena's hands found their way to his shoulders, then into his hair. As they both surrendered to the inevitable pull between them, the world around them, the tribe, the cliffs, even the night sky faded to a distant hum. There was only fire, only longing, only the fierce promise that neither would betray the other. And as Tall Hawk whispered again, softer this time, not as a command but as a vow, Elena felt her destiny crystallize. "Don't move. I need you close, always." Her lips curved into a small, breathless smile. "Always," she whispered back in that moment. Captured in the canyon's shadows and bathed in starlight, their bond was sealed not by law, not by fear, but by choice, trust, and the unyielding fire of love that had grown between a captured maid and the Apache warrior who had made her his world. The fire of the camp burned low, the canyon wind whispered softly, and Elena knew that whatever storms might come, they would face them together. Her destiny, once uncertain and stolen, had been reclaimed not by chance, but by the courage to choose, and the warrior who had risked everything to honor that choice.